He is a dual citizen of the United States and Spain. Ax-3 marks his 6th mission to space, having completed 3 space shuttle flights and a Soyuz mission as a NASA astronaut prior to commanding AX-1 with Axiom Space. MLA holds the NASA record for both the total number of spacewalks and the cumulative amount of time conducting spacewalks. Today, when not in low Earth orbit, MLA serves as Axiom Space's chief astronaut.
And from Italy, our pilot is Colonel Wальтер Вилладей. This mission is his inaugural trip to low Earth orbit. Villade, a colonel in the Italian Air Force, currently serves as head of the Italian Air Force's representative office in the United States. He has completed cosmonaut training as a space engineer, participated in multiple analog training missions, and flown a variety of aircraft and missions as an active flight engineer in the Italian Air Force. This mission is significant for Italy in that it commemorates the 100th year since the founding of the Italian Air Force.
From Turkey, our 3rd crew member is mission specialist Альпер Гезеравчи. Through this mission, Альпер has become the first Turkish astronaut to go to space. With 15 years of experience across a myriad of aircraft for the Turkish Air Force, Gezeravci got his start in the Air Force Academy in Istanbul, Turkey, and earned a master's degree from the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology. He then flew as a commercial airline captain for several years before returning to duty in the Turkish Air Force. On a further note, this mission marks the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Republic of Turkey.
And finally, from Sweden, we have mission specialist Markus Vandt. A lieutenant colonel in the Swedish Air Force, Marcus flew 9 years as a fighter pilot and graduated from the U.S. Navy Test Pilot School at the top of his class.
Temperate for our crew during re-entry. Next up, we are waiting for the claw to separate. The claw connects the trunk to the capsule, delivers power, telemetry, and fluids, and claw separation is the first step in trunk separation. And we are just about 3 minutes or so away from claw separation. Now, what you're seeing there on your screen is a view of mission control here in Hawthorne, California. Now, what you're seeing there on your screen is a view of mission control here in Hawthorne, California. And again, in just a few minutes, we will have claw separation, which will be shortly followed by trunk separation, just about a minute afterwards. And then a few minutes after trunk separation, we will begin a deorbit burn that will help bring the Dragon into an orbit that takes it down, ready for the landing zone.
Yes, and while we're waiting for that, on your right of the screen, you see Mission Control Center in Houston, Texas. That is Axiom's Mission Control Center, also known as MCCA. And from MCCA, teams have been monitoring and supporting this mission.
Deorbit sequence start. Copy.
That's great. That's just the kind of call these crews are waiting to hear and these support teams are waiting to hear from Mission Control.
Yeah, that call out just confirms that they are going to begin the deorbit sequence, and claw separation again is coming up here in just a couple of minutes. And about a minute after claw separation, we will also have trunk separation. That is the unpressurized section of the vehicle that will jettison from the Dragon capsule and expose the heat shield that will be used as the vehicle and the crew re-enter into the Earth's atmosphere.
And again, on your right, you see views of MCCA, Axiom's Mission Control Center in Houston, Texas. And really, this is kind of the hub of our operations for supporting the AX missions. So Ax-3, throughout the course of their time from launch into orbit on ISS and now coming back home, has been supported 24/7 by this team of flight controllers. They support things from payload and stowage operations to payload support and integration, and just helping crew maintain and schedule their day.
Yeah, it's awesome to see both teams working in tandem.
Yeah.
Help bring the Ax-3 crew back home to Earth. Now we
generation. So that's where I saw the Naval Academy. I fell in love with
for the call out. Once we do have claw separation, about a minute later, we will be able to jettison the trunk from the Dragon capsule.
Є Слот Сіті.
And if you're just joining us, we are expecting claw separation for that trunk jettison. So that means that telemetry is looking good, the nitrox system is primed for cabin and suit cooling, and the heat shield is exposed and ready for atmospheric reentry. Up next is the deorbit burn. This is the last time that the forward Dracos, which are the 4 thrusters located on the top of the vehicle, will ignite. The deorbit burn will place Dragon on a precise trajectory to return to the splashdown zone off the coast of Daytona, Florida, and will last approximately 9 minutes.
Yes, and while we're waiting for those calls, it's really kind of is starting the dynamic phase of what we're looking at for this return trip home.
Yeah.
It's a very active day. We saw both mission control centers here in Hawthorne and then also in Houston, really working towards all of that effort to bring them home. So it's starting this dynamic operations. It's working through the procedures today. They're ready for this type of operation, and really we're getting into a lot of excitement here today.
Yeah, and you say dynamic. There's a lot of things that are going to happen very quickly. Each one of these milestones are only a few minutes apart, aside from the deorbit burn, which will last about 9 minutes, but it's like it's a event after event. So pretty exciting for the crew. I'm sure they're very excited to come home. They've been in space for about 21 days now.
23 flight days too. Yeah.
I'm sure they will not miss the space views, but they're probably very, very excited to splash down back on Earth.
I think they are, yeah. And we were talking about waiting for those calls today, it being very dynamic. Really, a lot of these dynamic phases are started by each of those calls, and the crews on ground, supporting off the coast of Florida, are all waiting for those calls to hear, so they know that we're on track for the right operations that are coming next.
Exactly. And again, if you're just now joining us, we are just waiting for the deorbit burn to begin. That should be coming in just about a couple minutes. It will last about 9 minutes and will help reorient the Dragon capsule on a trajectory that will line it up in preparation for its landing. And splashdown is, just under a couple Hours away from now.
Yeah, we're looking forward to a good morning of activity as we press towards crew coming down, splashing down, and then at that point we're really ready to greet our crew home, and learn about their mission, learn more about their mission, and just really have them back on Earth. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Dragon. It's about 27 feet tall. And you could see on your screen that the top portion is the capsule portion of the vehicle, and the bottom portion is the trunk section. That trunk section is the unpressurized portion of the vehicle, which we did just jettison a few moments ago. We no longer need the trunk there. You can see that the black portion of it, that is the solar arrays. That provides power to the vehicle.
Let's talk
But
a
now
little
that the
bit
vehicle is coming
about
home,
Dragon.
we
It's
are
about
exposing,
27
or have
feet
exposed,
tall.
the heat shield, which is on
And
the
you can see
bottom
on your
of that
screen that the
capsule,
top portion
and that
is the
helps protect
capsule
the vehicle
portion
and the
of the
crew as
vehicle,
it's
and the bottom
re-entering
portion
back
is the
into
trunk
the Earth's
section.
atmosphere.
That trunk section is the
So
unpressurized
very exciting, very
Что за...
awesome vehicle, keeping the crew safe and cool. Now that the trunk is separated, it's on its own internal battery power. So it is keeping the crew cool, even though there's nothing connected to it. That's what the solar arrays are there for. It's charged up those batteries, so now it has enough power to bring the vehicle and the crew back home.
Right, and that trunk.
Да японский, блин! А. Ага, даже так. Ладно, всем привет, с вами снова Space, и вы наконец-то опять попали на мою прямую трансляцию. Сегодня мы смотрим трансляцию приводнения пилотируемого корабля Crew Dragon миссии Axiom-3. Ну и чё? Ну... В общем, SpaceX, Axiom Space и NASA планируют 9 февраля, чтобы астронавты C212.3 Freedom и Axiom-3 отправились с Международной космической станции, выполнив серию маневров, чтобы улететь от космической станции. Корабль проведет несколько маневров по снижению орбиты, отделит свой грузовой отсек и снова идет в атмосферу Земли, прежде чем приводниться у побережья Флориды. На борту космического корабля будут астронавты Ax-3 Майкл Лопес-Алегрия и Вальтер Вилладей, Альпер Гезеравчи и Маркус Вандт, которые прилетели на космическую станцию на корабле Crew Dragon S212.3 Freedom, когда Falcon 9 запустил космический корабль со стартовой площадки C-39А в космическом центре имени Кеннеди во Флориде в четверг 18 января в 21:49 по UTC. Таймлайн приводнения. Время по UTC. В 12:37 уже было отделение грузового отсека, и в 12:41 сейчас уже начался маневр для схода с орбиты. В 12:54 будет закрытие носового конуса. И в 13:26 развертывание тормозных и основных парашютов. И в 13:30 само приводнение. Кстати, описание у меня неправильно написано. Потому что отстыковка была еще 7 февраля. 7 ведь? Лучше это проверить. Да, 7. Вот, планирую 7 февраля. Вот здесь написать. Нет, оставим 9, а потом уже после я все перепишу по правильному, когда трансляция закончится. Вот. Во-первых, как всегда, извиняюсь за то, что трансляции не было 9 дней. Запуск электронный не смог постримить, потому что я был уже на учебе. Запуск Space по этой же причине. И отстыковку Дрэгона я просто забыл про нее, что она вообще должна быть, и поэтому да. Вот.
lowering the chance that we'll have to wave off due to bad weather. Since Dragon is capable of splashdown on either side of the Florida Panhandle, we have two identical and fully equipped recovery vessels ready to support.
И сейчас я вам расскажу про сам, в общем-то, космический корабль. Crew Dragon 2, это Crew Dragon, либо же Cargo Dragon 2. Это класс частично многоразовых космических кораблей, разработанных и производимых SpaceX в первую очередь для полетов на Международной космическую станцию. SpaceX также запускает частные миссии, такие как Inspiration 4 и Axiom Space. Это и есть одна из этих частных миссий. Существует два варианта: пилотируемый Crew Dragon и грузовой Cargo Dragon, в качестве замены оригинального Dragon 1. Космический корабль состоит из многоразовой капсулы и одноразового грузового отсека. Он запускается на ракете Falcon 9, а капсула возвращается способом приводнения, собственно. Поэтому мы здесь и собрались сейчас. Стартовая масса. Масса на орбите составляет 12 519 кг на момент отстыковки от МКС. Возвращаемая капсула весит 9616 кг, включая экипаж, плюс 150 кг полезной нагрузки. Сухая масса 7700 кг, только возвращаемая капсула без грузового отсека. Грузоподъемность на низкую околоземную орбиту 6 тонн, на МКС 3307 кг под давлением и 800 кг без давления в грузовом отсеке. На Землю она может вернуть до 2507 кг груза и выбросить в грузовом отсеке 800 кг мусора. Вмещает до 4 членов экипажа, вообще до 7, но НАСА не разрешила больше 4, хотя туда может влезть 7 в 2 этажа. Диаметр составляет 4 метра, высота 8,1 метр с грузовым отсеком, угол боковой стенки 15 градусов. Объем 9,3 кубических метра под давлением и 12,1 кубический метр без давления. Либо же 37 кубических метров без давления с увеличенным грузовым отсеком, который никогда не запускали. Он может прожить 10 дней в беспилотном варианте и 200 дней прискованным к МКС. Все было построено 9 кораблей, 4 пилотируемых, 3 грузовых, 1 AC, LCC и 1 списанный. Один пилотируемый также сейчас в стадии строительства. Было запущено 9 грузовых и 13 пилотируемых миссий, а также 2 суборбитальных для испытания системы аварийного спасения. Также при прожиге двигателей Супер Драка был потерян один корабль. Первый запуск был произведен 2 марта 2019 года в беспилотном варианте к МКС и 20 мая 2020 года уже с экипажем на МКС. На корабле устанавливается 8 двигателей Супер Драка в качестве системы аварийного спасения. Супер Драк — это гипербарический ракетный двигатель. Система аварийного спасения, которая работает на 4 окиси азота и монометилгидрозине. Тяга на уровне моря составляет 71 кН у каждого двигателя. Давление в камере сгорания 6,9 мегапаскалей. Удельный импульс на уровне моря 235 секунд. Запас топлива для них 1388 кг. И также устанавливается 18 двигателей Драка для маневрирования в космосе с тягой по 400 ньютон каждый, который также работает на 4 окиси азота и монометилгидрозине с удельным импульсом 300 секунд. Всего в корабль влазит до 2562 килограммов топлива. Вот. Через 5 минут у нас уже будет закрытие носового конуса. И скоро уже начнется сам вход в атмосферу.
And for Ax-3, the Italian Air Force, the Turkish Space Agency, and ESA each had their own specific mission objectives for their respective crew members. And together, we made sure that they were ready to meet these goals.
Yeah, I think it is pretty amazing all the work that these these crew members put into training for launch, for time on the International Space Station, as well as returning back home. And I think people forget that you're not just training for, the dynamic events of launch. You're also training for, the science that they're doing on the mission, and for the Ax-3 crew, the outreach events that they're also doing throughout their mission. So it's not just, one portion of the training. They have to train on so many different things.
You're right. They're training for, like what you see here, right? They're training for capsule operations, for vehicle operations. They're training for their launch day, their landing day. They're training for the life on orbit. What I love about it, though, too, is it's a whole network of training. It's not
Ну что, можно еще рассказать про, собственно, экипаж этой миссии. Майкл Лопес-Алегрия, это командир от Axiom Space. Это летчики-испытатели, бывший астронавт НАСА, совершивший уже получается для него, наверное, шестой уже космический полет, общей продолжительностью уже более 300 суток, ему 65 лет. Он родился в Мадриде, Испания. Имя при рождении Мигель Элада Лопес-Алегрия. И еще ребенком переехал жить в США. Там он получил степень бакалавра в области системной инженерии и степень магистра в области авиационной инженерии, закончил школу летчиков-испытателей. До отбора в отряд астронавта НАСА служил инженером-испытателем в военно-морской авиационном испытательном центре. Имеет более 5700 часов налета на 30 различных типов самолетов. Был выбран астронавтом НАСА в 1992 году. Является обладателем 2 американских космических рекордов по количеству выходов в открытый космос 10 и по общей продолжительности работ за бортом МКС 67 часов 40 минут. С 2012 по 2014 год был президентом Федерации коммерческих космических полетов. В 2017 присоединился к компании Axiom Space в должности директора по развитию бизнеса, а также стал главным астронавтом компании. В 2022 году совершил полет в качестве командира первой полностью частной пилотируемой миссии на МКС Axiom-3. Далее, Вальтер Вилладей, пилот ИАФ. Он родился в Риме, Италия. Он полковник ВВС Италии, в данный момент возглавляет правительство ИАФ США. Ему 49 лет. Начал свою карьеру в армии в 1998 году в воздушно-транспортной бригаде в Пизе, где до 2003 года работал в сфере технического обслуживания самолетов. Летал бортинженером на различных самолетах. Участвовал в миссиях в Афганистане, Ираке, Эфиопии и Эритрее. В 2005 году получил степень магистра в области аэрокосмической техники, спутников и орбитальных платформ в Неаполитанском университете и специализацию в области космонавтики в Римском университете. С 2008 года Вилладей проходил космическую подготовку в Центре подготовки космонавтов имени Юрия Гагарина в звездном городке. В 2011 получил классификацию бортинженера корабля «Союз» и российского сегмента МКС. Тренировался для выхода в открытый космос в российском скафандре «Орлан» и в 2015 году получил допуск на осуществление внекорабельной деятельности. В 2014 году был назначен президентом Совета и делегатом Европейской комиссии по поддержке космической сферы Европы. С 2017 года возглавляет отдел космических операций Управления по космосу ВВС Италии, а также является членом научного комитета Итальянского космического агентства. В 2021 году выбран для полета... Сейчас, подождите. В 2014 году был назначен. Думаю, может, если я сделаю вот так, будет куда получше звук. Не знаю. Типа, сволочь, вот так вот. Типа, реально, если... Я компом сейчас вообще не пользуюсь, тупо сижу, рассказываю. Выбран для полета Ну да, в принципе. В 2021 году был выбран для полета в рамках суборбитальной миссии Unity-23 компании Virgin Galactic. Позже она сменила название на Galactic 01. В 2022 году отобран для полета в миссии компании Axiom Space на МКС, был дублером Джона Шофнера, полетевшего на станцию миссии Axiom-2. В 2023 году Вилладей совершил суборбитальный космический полет в рамках первой коммерческой миссии компании Virgin Galactic, став 8-м частным астронавтом компании. В рамках миссии Axiom-3 он будет выполнять обязанности пилота корабля Crew Dragon. И маневр схода с орбиты закончен. И далее, Альпер Гезеравчи, специалист в миссии TCI. Он родился в Сиривке, Турция. Ему 44 года. Обучался в военно-воздушной академии в Стамбуле, где получил степень бакалавра наук в области электронной техники. Также имеет степень магистра инженерии, полученную в Технологическом институте ВВС США. Летчик ВВС Турции имеет 15-летний опыт полетов на 7 различных типов аппаратов. 7 лет работал командиром гражданских воздушных судов в авиакомпании Turkish Airlines, позже в различных частных авиакомпаниях. Работал руководителем полетами и офицером по безопасности полетов. В данный момент является командиром авиакрыла базы ВВС Турции в Адане. В 2023 году был выбран основным кандидатом на полет в рамках миссии Axiom Space. Он будет специалистом миссии Axiom-3 и стал первым турецким астронавтом, полетевшим в космос. И последний это у нас Маркус Вандт, специалист миссии ЕСА. Он родился в Хаммаре, Швеция, ему 43 года. В 1999 году стал командиром патруля и рейнджером воздушно-десантной школы шведской армии. В 2000 году проходил обучение в технологическом университете в Гетеборге, Швеция, специализируясь на электронике и искусственном интеллекте, коммуникационных технологиях и космической технике. В 2004 году поступил в школу летной подготовки ВВС Швеции, учился в военной академии в Стокгольме. Прошел подготовку в школе командующих воздушными операциями ВВС Швеции и стал капитаном военной академии. В 2006 году основал и стал генеральным директором компании Untitled, специализирующейся на космической подготовке пилотов-истребителей. В 2007 году получил степень магистра электроники в Технологическом университете Чалмера. В 2014 году окончил школу летчиков-испытателей ВМС США, став лучшим в своем классе. В том же году стал летчиком-испытателем в компании SAP Aeronautics и прошел путь до главного испытателя. В 2014 году окончил школу летчиков. Он имеет более чем 20-летний стаж службы в качестве летчика-истребителя, командира эскадрильи, командира авиакрыла и летчика-испытателя ВВС Швеции. В настоящее время является подполковником, награжденным многочисленными наградами за выдающиеся достижения в службе. Благодаря своей жене в ноябре 2022 года Вандт вместе с 16 другими кандидатами был выбран членом резерва астронавтов ЕСА. В 2023 году выбран членом экипажа миссии Axiom-3. В нем он полетел в качестве специалиста миссии. Миссия Вандта ЕСА называется Мунин, и она перекликается с другой миссией Хугин, датского астронавта Андреса Могенсена, который уже находится на МКС в рамках миссии Crew. Сообщается, что в миссию Мунин было вложено $47 миллионов. Шведская компания SAP является ее крупнейшим частным инвестором. Вандт стал вторым астронавтом ЕСА от Швеции, полетевшим на МКС, и третьим шведским астронавтом, побывавшим в космосе. Он также будет первым человеком из отряда астронавтов ЕСА 2022 года, кто отправился в космос. Это будет один из самых быстрых полетов с момента выбора в качестве кандидата в астронавты и до запуска на орбиту. И у нас остается ровно полчаса до приводнения. Также будет первым человеком из отряда астронавтов ЕСА-2000. Уже должно было быть закрытие носового конуса.
So they're able to bring a lot of that cargo back with them, back down to Earth.
Now, it's fantastic. With all of the mission objectives that they accomplished, it's a significant number of science, a significant amount of science that they can bring back home with them. And so to check out more of that, be sure to check out Axiomspace.com. Now, we've talked a good bit about what the crew accomplished on station, and we've highlighted some of the research that was returning from space on this Dragon, but we're also big proponents of the arts, right? So it's been very easy over time to make the connection between STEM and spaceflight, or science, technology, engineering, and math, and spaceflight. But over the last few years, we've been seeing a shift from STEM to STEAM. And on this mission, we were able to actually have a number of pieces of artwork that were placed in space. This is an essential part of exploration, and we wanted to showcase that on this mission. So for this mission, we dedicated space for 7 pieces aboard Dragon. And this first piece here is X-0 Space Seeker by Dr. Cyan Proctor. Now, she was the pilot on Inspiration 4 mission, and this is a metallic spray-painted canvas with a laser-etched X-0 hand-painted with golden glitter hues. The next piece is a photo by David Krugman titled 2 Seconds, Then Totality. This was taken of the 2018 solar eclipse in Greenbrier, Tennessee. Our third piece is titled Everything You Know and Care About by Amber Vittoria. And our fourth item is a photograph by Richard Zhang titled Infinity. Captured in Joshua Tree National Park, Zhang sought to create a tribute to the stars of the Milky Way that inspired him to dream beyond the limits of Earth. And then we have the soft plush doll Augustus from Mumbot's fictional world. As our sixth piece, we have a cut strip from one of Jack Kaido's earliest physical paintings. Kaido has titled this piece, Past Memories 2015. And finally, we have Heart and Craft number 1 by artists Snowfro and Jordan Lyle. Now, all these pieces stayed on board Dragon during the Ax-3 mission, and through collaboration between Axiom Space, Transient Labs, and Nifty Gateway, each of these pieces have a digital iteration inspired by the flown works available for purchase. For a direct link to the Space Girls collection, visit nft.axiom.com.
John, what I think is so cool about this is, you know, tying the arts to science and technology. I think people kind of forget that technology is born from the creative minds of, you know, artists and creators. You know, we're just here trying to bring things to life that people have thought about and, you know, imagined. And I love that we're starting to tie that in a lot more and make an effort to do a lot more art and creativity to drive that technology and science.
I absolutely agree. It's an essential part of just the human experience, and it's essential that it carries itself into these, you know, these forward missions that we're moving into. You can't have any of this creativity without the artistic creativity behind it. So, you know, this brings to light things like commercial missions like Ax-3, Artemis, the Artemis mission, and also talking about stations. So regarding the future, like you just mentioned, Jesse, let's talk a little bit about our future of Axiom Station. So let's take a closer look and see how this vision of the future is taking shape.
There's sort of 2 philosophies in aerospace. One is you sit around and you think about requirements and you think about what you want to build. Or you build something, you test it, you figure out what works, you build another generation. We really believe at Axiom Space, the path to building something that doesn't exist in the world is you got to start building prototypes. We sit and think about what we want to build for a little bit, but then we just go build the thing, test the thing, fire the engine. Our role really is to lead the way.
A year ago, walking into this facility, you didn't see nearly as much hardware as you see today. Full-scale mock-ups, training hardware, flight hardware. Axiom was created to build a space station, and that's exactly what this team is doing.
We're still on target to launch our first module the end of 26. The pressure vessel is undergoing welding at Talassalenia, our partner in Italy. There's some of the largest forgings in the world. There's only a couple places in Europe that could even forge some of the pieces. The pressure vessel will arrive in Houston, and then we'll do all the final outfitting at our spaceport facility. And in the 50-year history of human spaceflight in Houston, it will be the first human-rated spacecraft ever built in Houston. Our teams are building all the other things. The life support system, guidance and navigation, we're building our own propulsion system. Our philosophy is to keep as much engineering in-house as possible. It allows us to have long expertise over a long time because we want to be building modules and adding to our space station for years and years.
Through our station, we will open up low Earth orbit to the world to explore, to travel, to complete science in space and beyond.
Microgravity represents this enormous natural resource, and we think there are things that we can do there that lead to medical breakthroughs, material breakthroughs, and leads to a better world for everyone.
It's the ability to produce the highest quality of parts, materials, biological media, an environment that is nearly pristine.
Behind this is the Earth Observatory. We will fly it as part of the third module that goes to the International Space Station. And then the International Space Station robot arm will actually move it and position it underneath HAB-1, so it will have this fantastic view of the Earth through the largest space windows ever attempted.
This is as close as you can get to actually doing an EVA in space. We talk about the overview effect, where crews come back and see the world in a different sense than they did before. And I think this is where you can really contemplate that whole experience. Ax-3 is one of those learning opportunities for a multinational crew to work together in space. This is exactly how we envision Axiom Station to operate, where you have people from all over the world experiencing life as a community in space.
Every morning when I walk into this building, I'm inspired by the work this team is completing. It's just a wonderful feeling seeing so many people excited about the prospect of launching the first commercial space station.
If we're going to make a sustainable presence outside of the Earth biome, this is how we have to do it.
Axiom Space is a continuation of a human need to explore and to move humans into the cosmos.
And we heard that call out that we have the expected LOS coming up at 5:16 a.m. In just under 10 minutes from now. Reusability is key to making space flight more routine and ultimately what will enable humans to become.
Я так понял, нам сказали то, что в 16 минут, то есть в 13-16 по IC будет потеря связи, я так понял, где-то через 10 минут, получается. А значит и начнется вход в атмосферу. Тогда он даже начнется немного раньше. Поэтому ждем.
In space, but also because they are laying the foundation for that future where more people from more countries all around the world have an opportunity to travel to space.
Вот что еще можно рассказать про сам Dragon. Про сам Dragon.
At SpaceX, we want to help create a future where not just hundreds of people, but thousands and ultimately millions of people can travel off of Earth to live and work in space and other planets. Last year, we flew 6 Dragon missions. This year, we could launch up to 8 missions, including 5 or 6 human spaceflight missions, and that's only going to increase in the future. To support our growing manifest of Dragon missions, we've recently made some new upgrades to our other Florida launch pads.
Вот корабль Crew C-201. Это у нас опытный образец, который использовался для 100-секундного теста на срабатывание системы аварийного спасения со стартовой площадки. И также для тестов посадки на двигателях же его изначально хотели садить на реактивной посадке. Его использовали для теста посадки на привязи на испытательном полигоне в Макгрегоре. Потом C-202. Это опытный образец. Это модуль квалификации сосудов под давлением, используемый для структурных испытаний. C-203. Он использовал это модуль системы экологического контроля и жизнеобеспечения. До сих пор используется для тестирования с участием человека. Си-204. Он разрушен. Первый Dragon 2, полетевший в космос. Единственный полет был Демо-1. Случайно уничтожен во время наземных испытаний двигатель системы аварийного спасения через несколько недель после полета. Далее, Си-205. Первоначально должен был использоваться на Демо-2, но вместо этого участвовал в тесте на срабатывание системы аварийного спасения в полете. Вот, полетал 8 минут 54 секунды и приводнился. Си-206 далее. Использовался в качестве миссии Демо-2, 64 дня полета. В качестве миссии Crew 2, 200 дней полета. В качестве миссии Axiom-1, 17 дней полета. И Crew 6, 185 дней полета. И далее Си-207. Использовался в миссии Crew 1, 167 дней полета. И Inspiration 4, почти 3 дня полета. Это первый серийный Crew Dragon. Си-208. А, нет, это грузовые. Грузовые нас не интересуют. Далее, Си-210. Полеты Crew 3 176 дней, Crew 5 157 дней и Crew 7 уже 166 дней в полете. И вот 212, который сейчас, трансляцию приводнения которого мы смотрим, он летал в миссии Crew 4, 170 дней полета, и Axiom-2, 9 дней полета, и сейчас, в Axiom-3 уже 11 дней полета. Нет, какие 11? 21. Еще устаревшая информация, подождите. Да, где-то 21-22 дня он уже летает. И Си-213 сейчас строится. Это последний Crew Dragon, который будет построен. Строительство планируется завершить в этом году. И уже скоро у нас должен начаться вход в атмосферу. Поэтому ждем.
But beyond that, Alper had a conversation with the president of Turkey. Walter engaged with the Italian prime minister. Marcus spoke at the European Space Conference, and MLA spoke with Melissa Navia from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Also, the Ax-3 astronauts performed 56 different experiments, including studying metastatic breast cancer organoids for the Stanford Stem Cell Institute. And we were told the crew was able to see microgravity-induced changes in organoid growth versus how they grow on ground.
That is a very long list of things that this crew did on board the International Space Station, but all really awesome. It's great to see that they also incorporated some outreach events throughout all their science experiments that they had to do while they were working there. So just incredible crew.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing mission. They accomplished all their mission objectives, from media outreach, like you mentioned, Jesse, to all of the science research that was done, and to be able to come back and say, we did it all. That's an amazing feat. And this, like we mentioned at the beginning, this is a mission of firsts for so many countries, for so many agencies. But there's one crew member that we have not gotten to talk about, and she's on board, and her name is Gigi. She is a critical crew member and aspect of the mission. So that's right. Our fifth crew member is our microgravity indicator, Gigi. This is a long-standing tradition in spaceflight and was continued on Ax-3. And this tradition is having an indicator inside the spacecraft to provide a visual reference for when the crew has reached weightlessness. So as the fifth crew member of Ax-2 and now Ax-3, Gigi's mission is to inspire children around the world to learn about space. Gigi is a Build-A-Bear teddy bear wearing Axiom's Axiom-U spacesuit, just like the ones we are currently building for NASA astronauts to wear on future Artemis missions to the moon. you can get your own full-size, flight-ready Build-A-Bear crew member for all your missions at home. As you can see, she's ready for every adventure.
The zero-G indicator is one of my favorite parts of crew missions, so very awesome to see Gigi on board with the crew. And speaking of spacesuits, the spacesuits are very unique and custom designed, and you can see there on your screen. They have a 3D printed helmet, and this is actually all a single piece. Everything is connected together. The suit with the helmet is all a single piece. And this suit is actually made to fit with the seat. So these are custom suits to the astronauts, but also the suits and the suits and the seats are customized to match each other. And they're really an extension of the Dragon spacecraft. They essentially can provide, nitrox and cooling just as the cabin capsule of the Dragon spacecraft. So very cool, very unique spacesuits that we have here.
Yeah, and I think those suits really highlight an essential element of what is making days like today, days like launch, and flying these missions so important. It's the attention paid to the crew. It's an autonomous vehicle, but you're going to be on as we saw in Ax-3 there, it had a very long uphill. They have a very long downhill. You want to be comfortable during that, and those suits demonstrate that ability to, get crew comfortable, have it customized to their bodies. For their mission, and I think just the suit itself, like you said, it's not only looks cool, but it's incredibly functional.
Exactly, and speaking of functional, we are just about under a minute away from that expected loss of signal. So the crew will be going through this blackout period here for about 7 minutes. Again, it's expected. This is the plasma building up around the vehicle as it's heating up. It's getting to about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And so we will continue to check in with the crew. The core will continue to check in once we have once we're at about 5:23 a.m. And have that expected acquisition of signal. You may hear some comms of the core calling out to the crew just to check to see when we do have that connection again.
Right, and we mentioned earlier, this is a very dynamic day. There's a lot of elements through the day that carry us from, we already experienced undocking a few days ago, but from basically the moment that they've committed now to deorbit and reentry, from here on out, it really is paying attention to these timelined events, the loss of signal that is expected, the acquisition of signal that we have a known time to be pinging crew and seeing how they're doing, followed immediately by a lot of very dynamic back-to-back events, right? We're looking for the drogue parachutes to deploy. We're looking for visual confirmation of the vehicle coming in, and then ultimately followed by splashdown and recovery. It's going to be a very dynamic day.
Yeah, it's getting really exciting. We're just under 15 minutes from their splashdown. Right. The crew has been in space for about 23 days or so, and they're almost back home on Earth. Again, if you're just now joining us, at this point, we are in the communications blackout period, which is expected to last approximately 7 minutes due to the plasma formation around the spacecraft. During this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by mission control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communications is possible.
Итак, начался вход в атмосферу и потеря связи и, собственно, телеметрии нету по причине того, что корабль нагревается при входе в атмосферу из-за трения в воздух в среднем до 2000 градусов Цельсия, и получается вокруг него плазма, а плазма, как мы знаем, сигналы никакие не пропускает. Итак, начался вход. И уже через 7 минут, то есть в 13:26 по IC, будет сначала развертывание тормозных парашютов, а потом и основных. Я напоминаю то, что это корабль C-212.3 Freedom. Миссия Axiom-3. И мы ждем, когда, собственно, уже возобновится телеметрия. и связь. Телеметрию же нам не показывает все равно. И также скоро нам должны уже начать, я надеюсь, показывать камеры с корабля. Желательно из корабля тоже. Желательно, чтобы его хотя бы с земли нам показывали.
On that side of Florida, which is currently waiting for the crew to splash down and will begin their recovery operations to recover the crew. Once they splash down in the ocean, we will do some safety checks, but then the recovery crew will start to make their way to the capsule and start performing recovery operations.
Right. Yeah, and at this point, you know, during this blackout, like we said, when we come to acquisition of signal, there's certain things that we're looking for, and one of those is definitely going to be a visual cue of that vehicle coming back in, followed by other visual cues like the drogue chutes deploying, and then followed by those main chutes. And I think that's a really cool. It's a really cool system, but it's also very essential to get that crew going, or the vehicle moving from the speed that it's moving down to another comfortable phase. It's like a staged approach to get them to a comfortable landing so that Shannon can go and perform safe recovery and greeting operations.
Yeah, I actually think it's pretty incredible that, you know, while you're in orbit, you're traveling 17,500 miles per hour. But throughout this 7-minute period of reentry, it is slowing down the vehicle so much down.
Кстати, приводнение планируется в Атлантическом океане у Дейтона-Бич, Флорида. Вот, отстыковка была через 18 дней, проведенных на МКС. Плюс полет туда, назад, ну, почти 21 день где-то примерно выходит. Всего не провели в космосе.
It's still going to be very dynamic. There's still going to be a lot of activity on the ground to ensure that we're safely approaching crew, that we're keeping them safe, but that also we are making as swift contact as we can to ensure that, you know, now that they have traveled from 17,500 all the way down, coming back, and there you can see the recovery vessel, a live shot of that. We're going to see a bit more of that later today.
And we are just about a minute away from the expected acquisition.
Вот, собственно, только что мы видели корабль, на который будет поднят корабль Crew Dragon S212.3 Freedom миссия Axiom-3, который приводнится уже где-то через 8 минут, и через уже минуту мы ожидаем снова появления связи с кораблем, возобновления связи и получения телеметрии.
TCA in Houston, Texas, are constantly monitoring the situation that we have for crew coming back down. They are supporting crew throughout this entire...
SpaceX, comm check.
Loud and clear, SpaceX.
Loud and clear as well. Expect automated chute deployment.
Copy, Arthur.
И мы уже видим экипаж, а значит связь и телеметрия возобновлена. Да, есть связь и телеметрия с кораблем Crew Dragon S212 миссия Axiom-3, который уже через 6 минут совершит приводнение у берегов Атлантического океана. И нам показывают, собственно, вот сам корабль. Еще входит в атмосферу, еще немного горит. Ну, уже, считай, не горит, но он еще очень горячий. И через 2 минуты у нас уже будет развертывание сначала 2 тормозных парашютов, а потом и 4 основных. Ждем.
Good comms between the core and the crew. And again, we are just a couple minutes away from drogue parachutes deploying. And just under a minute after the drogue parachutes deploy, and currently you can see on your screen.
Вот мы видим, как в корабле поворачиваются кресла экипажа.
In preparation for splashdown.
Got brace for drogue window.
And looked like the seat rotation was completed, and now they are ready for those drogue parachutes to deploy. What you're seeing on your screen is a live view of the Dragon capsule returning back to Earth. And there you can see the drogue parachutes.
И есть открытие двух вытяжных парашютов, и есть камеры с корабля Dragon.
Shortly after, we should see the 4 main chutes deploy here.
Visual of 2 healthy drogues and descent rate nominal.
Excellent call-outs there. And we do have visual confirmation that the drogues have deployed. Now just waiting for the 4 main parachutes to deploy as well.
И есть открытие 4 основных парашютов. Очень красивые виды с камеры на корабле Dragon. И вот парашюты сейчас будут дальше открываться уже полностью. Вот.
We show ourselves at 1,000 meters.
1000 метров осталось.
Got some good call-outs there. And just a few minutes away from the Axiom-3 crew splashing down back on Earth here.
SpaceX Dragon, 800 meters.
800 метров до поверхности воды.
The crew as they're making their way back down to Earth.
$600 meters.
600.
And we're just a couple minutes away from splashdown. Landing in water is simpler, therefore more reliable than.
Вот это прям очень красивый вид, мне кажется, прям вообще. Еще бы качество получше, чтобы корабль получше было видно, то это вообще пипец.
Dragon Freedom carrying Ax-3 as it's
400.
Slowly making its way to splashdown.
No, these are absolutely fantastic views that we got at acquisition of signal, Jesse. It was incredible coming back from AOS to see those good comm checks, those good visual confirmations of the vehicle coming in, and then the visual confirmations of the first drogue chutes, which deployed beautifully, and followed by the main chutes. And additionally, we got to see crew even rotate their seats to prepare for splashdown. All of these are
200. Crew brace for splashdown.
Copy. Braced for splashdown. Splashdown. Copy splashdown. We are with you.
И есть удачное приводнение корабля SpaceX Crew Dragon S212.3 Freedom миссии Axiom-3 с 4 членами экипажа миссии с Международной космической станции после 18 дней на МКС и примерно 21 дня в космосе. Очень красивые виды посадки, жаль, качество, ну, такое себе, можно было бы и получше. Хотелось бы получше. Ну, даже вот здесь, ну, вот что это за качество, блин? Ну, алло, ну они в 4К же обычно все стримят SpaceX, ну, что за пипец? Ну, ладно, тут Full HD, ну, даже на Full HD это далеко не похоже. Посадки, жаль.
Some excellent views of the Dragon capsule there. The SpaceX recovery ship and team have been waiting for...
И сейчас этот корабль будут несколько десятков минут, может даже час целый вытаскивать, собственно, на корабль. Обычный корабль, не космический, не вот этот. И уже потом будут... Ну, экипаж, в принципе, 3 недели, я думаю, экипаж сможет еще сам выйти, или уже нет. Или они уже инвалиды. Не знаю, блин. 2 недели вроде еще сами могли как-то ходить. Ну, не сами, с помощью людей, но хотя бы их не выносили прям... на носилках, типа как после полугода.
These are some great daytime views of Dragon splashdown. Ax-3 crew still inside of the Dragon capsule, waiting for their recovery vessel.
И что у нас дальше по запускам и всяким там событиям? Завтра в 00:34 по IT будет запуск Falcon 9 с миссии Starlink Group 713. Но, скорее всего, я это не буду стримить, я тупо буду либо спать, либо еще что-то. Либо буду очень сильно хотеть спать, поэтому не буду это стримить. Может, буду, не знаю. Затем, 14 февраля в 5:57 по IT запуск ракет Falcon 9 с миссией с лунным посадочным модулем новоси АМ-1. Но, к сожалению, я не могу это поставить. Хотя, скорее всего, не смогу уже. Затем 15 февраля в... О, нифига, 15 февраля в течение 3 часов, 3 минут, целых 3 запуска будет. Сначала 15 февраля в 00:22 по IT. Второй запуск ракеты H3 версии 22 с миссией Web4 CSAT-1 и TIRSAT. Затем в... Всего лишь через 29 минут в 00:51 по IT запуск ракеты Falcon 9 с миссией USSF 124 с мыса Канаверал, посадка на посадочную площадку LZ-1. И в 3:25 по UTC запуск ракет Союз-2-1А с грузовым кораблем Прогресс МС-26 на МКС. И 17 февраля в 7:11 по IT будет сама стыковка Прогресса МС-26 с МКС. Все запуски за 15 февраля я постримлю, да. Стыковку Прогресса МС-26 постримить, к сожалению, не получится. И 17 февраля также в 12:00 по ETC будет запуск ракеты GCLV МК-2 с миссией INSA-3DS. Это тоже, скорее всего, постримить не получится.
the Dragon Freedom spacecraft.
Затем 22 февраля в 8:11 появится запуск Falcon 9 с пилотируемым кораблем Crew Dragon миссии Crew 8 на МКС. Это не получится, к сожалению, постримить, если его хотя бы на один день не перенесут. И затем 29 февраля в 5:43 по UTC запуск ракеты Союз-2-1П фрегат М с миссией Метеор М номер 24 и другими аппаратами с восточного. Это, к сожалению, также постримить не получится. Также в этом месяце планируется EFT-2, но SpaceX даже до сих пор не... Ой, EFT-3, но SpaceX даже до сих пор не завершили расследование EFT-2, поэтому фиг им пока что не разрешение от FAA. Это они вроде бы пытаются зацепить Dragon за специальную фиговину, чтобы корабль его уже притягивал к себе. Ну, трансляция не заканчивая, просто оставлю вас тут самих и все.
We heard MLA call that all 4 crew members are feeling good. They're feeling well. They're feeling healthy. So this is fantastic. That first fast boat made good initial contact and, like you mentioned, is ready to kind of press into the next phase of operations here as we pull that Dragon back into the recovery vessel. You can also see on your screen the second fast boat, which provides redundant support to the primary fast boat, which made initial contact. In addition to helping just keep that area secure, right? Redundancy is a key aspect of spaceflight operations, not only on ground and in orbit, but also during recovery. In addition to that recovery, they're also working on that parachute recovery. So we saw that Dragon had jettisoned its parachutes after deployment and after splashdown. And this fast boat, as well as another jet ski, are helping to recover that parachute to, again, keep that area secure to not inhibit any operations that are going to be underway while that primary fast boat's making contact and doing its work, but also while Shannon's coming up right behind them.
There's that jet ski passing by. Part of the recovery team. Mm-hmm. And again, what you're seeing here is a live view of the Ax-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom, now splashed down on Earth. The recovery team is performing their recovery operations. Again, just waiting for them to perform some safety checks. We did get some good comms earlier that the crew is feeling good after splashdown. Mm-hmm. They had a pretty dynamic adventure this morning. And now hopefully get to relax a little bit while they're, waiting for the Dragon lift onto the recovery vehicle.
Right, dynamic, but completely according to plan. It was a beautiful execution of a splashdown day, and you can tell their crew is visors up. They're looking healthy and happy, and I think they're probably really looking forward to that first breath of fresh air.
If you're just now joining us, the Ax-3 crew has returned from space after being in space for about 21 days. They undocked from the International Space Station a couple of days ago and are now back on Earth. The recovery crew, again, performing their recovery operations. These are standard procedures. They're currently making sure that the vehicle is safe. Then we should see one of the crew members hop on board the Dragon capsule and begin operations to prepare the capsule for lifting onto the recovery vessel.
This is an excellent side-by-side view showing on, basically this is still the dynamic phase of operations, right? Crews splash down, they're safe and healthy, their visors up. But at the same time, everybody still has a job to do. So on the right, you can still see crew inside the capsule looking over the shoulders of Commander Michael Lopes-Allegria and pilot Wальтер Вилладей as they monitor their vehicle systems and stay in contact with ground crews here, with Core at SpaceX. And then on the left, you can see as the primary fast boat has made first contact, initial contact with the Dragon Freedom after its splashdown coming in from space. And at this point, they are maintaining that contact and just ensuring that the area is safe, that the vehicle is safe to continue those hoisting operations. So I love being able to see these views side by side to help everybody maintain that awareness exactly of what's going on outside the vehicle, but also in.
There you can see on your screen that the recovery crew member there is doing some checks, some ordnance and hypergol checks at the moment. Again, making sure that the vehicle is safe to approach. Then they can climb onto the capsule, begin rigging operations, and prepare the vehicle to be lifted onto the recovery vessel. Today is Shannon. Shannon is making its way to the recovery zone here. But these fast boats, and we did see a jet ski also with the crew, make their way a little bit faster and get the recovery process started sooner until the recovery vessel makes its way to the landing zone. What you're seeing is a live view of the Ax-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom, patiently waiting for their recovery operations. They've made their way back down to Earth, and the recovery team is working their standard procedures in preparation for lifting the capsule out of the water and onto the recovery vessel, and then eventually will egress the crew for the first time in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, we're waiting for those ordnance and hypergol checks to complete.
Dragon SpaceX, hypergol sweeps, and unfired ordnance checks nominal. Rigging in progress. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Copy, all our center, standing by.
And almost on call. That was an excellent call from Crew Dragon, saying that the hypergol checks are complete and the ordnance checks are complete, and they all completed nominal. So with that, we were able to proceed into the next phase of the dynamic operations, which allows rigging to begin so that we can hoist Dragon Freedom into Shannon. And we also heard there that Crew will be having their PMC or private medical conference with SpaceX. With SpaceX Medical, and just checking in on Crew. But as we reported earlier, or as MLA reported earlier, this crew's feeling healthy and happy to be home. Their visors are up, they are monitoring their systems, and over the next 25 minutes, we should be able to get them on board.
And there you can see on your screen our recovery vessel, Shannon, patiently waiting for the crew and capsule to be ready for lifting onto the recovery vessel. You can also see on Shannon, there is that landing pad there. That's because a helicopter is going to come and take the astronauts or the crew back to land. That's a much faster trip than, taking the recovery vessel all the way back to shore. So that's what that landing pad is for.
That's right. If you're just joining us, Axiom-3 crew has splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time or 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. And at this point, we are waiting for that recovery, the recovery efforts to continue. SpaceX team has made first contact with the Dragon Freedom capsule and crew. Crew reported all nominal health checks. They're feeling good and excited to be home. And at this point, we are waiting for those rigging operations to continue to get Dragon onto Shannon, that recovery vessel, so that they can have their final medical checks and get on that helicopter, and get back home, get back to land.
Yeah, I'm sure the crew's pretty excited to be back home. Pretty excited to take a breath of fresh air, as you mentioned.
Exactly. Right, excited to be home after, the 3 weeks in orbit, right? 23 flight days, 21 days, 18 days aboard the International Space Station, where they accomplished a suite of activities.
Dragon SpaceX comm check on Dragon to ground public.
Clear.
And Dragon, you're coming in choppy. We have pretty ready comm right now, so we're going to take some steps to reconfigure Dragon communications before we step into the PMC.
Copy, SpaceX.
Some comms between the core, the crew, operations and resources engineer to the crew. And what you're seeing on your screen is the recovery team, again, a crew member on the capsule, beginning rigging for preparation of lifting the capsule out of the water and onto the recovery vessel. And this is really great that we had a daytime splashdown. We're getting some really excellent views of all of these operations happening.
It's a beautiful early morning for splashdown. The weather's looking fantastic. The local environment is looking fantastic for crews to perform these operations, right? We mentioned earlier that this is really a safety critical aspect of the mission. And one that's important to note that we talked about training earlier too, and this aspect of the mission is something that these crews train for heavily. This fast boat recovery team, the entire recovery team efforts, all train for their specific roles in today's operations like this. And when the weather is playing nominally with you like this, it allows for that to execute quite well. And so we're able to see these teams really execute kind of a picture-perfect recovery effort. Rigging is going smoothly, and they're progressing well into it at this point, and we're waiting for those next steps to be able to hoist Dragon into Shannon.
Yeah, you mentioned, training for these operations. Throughout this entire mission, everybody's following standard procedures. The crew has tablets inside of the capsule with them where they can follow, their procedures, basically their instructions. And the recovery team does the same thing. Yeah. They're following very standard procedures, going step by step, and making sure that they perform every step carefully and having verification of each one of those steps. So while it may look like they're just doing their work, they're actually, following very specific instructions.
Exactly.
And again, what you're seeing on your screen is a recovery crew member on board of the Dragon capsule, rigging the vehicle in preparation for lifting onto or hoisting onto the recovery vessel. And honestly, the recovery team must be just as excited as the crew. They're going to be the first people
you're absolutely right.
that they get to see
You're absolutely right.
when they egress the Dragon capsule. So this is a really special, I'm sure the recovery crew, probably really enjoys their job.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, to play such a pivotal role in these operations, right? Crew has been, from launch until now, they've been away from their friends and family and away from Earth. And to be that crew that helps greet them and ensure that they're safely brought in, right? Mm-hmm. Following the procedures, doing your job to make sure that this crew is getting safely brought out of the water and into the vehicle, and then be able to see them smile and see everybody smile at the end of it. It's got to be a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how exciting that must be. Again, a live view inside of the Dragon Freedom capsule with our crew members of the Ax-3 crew. And there's a view of the recovery vessel. That is where the Dragon will be lifted out of the water and will sit in that little nest that you see there, that ring on the vessel.
I think it's a perfect name for holding a dragon. I think
Exactly.
that was intentional,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Definitely.
But right, it's a great view that kind of, to me signifies what Shannon's role in this operation is, right? Right now it's sitting and waiting while making approach, while the primary contact team is ensuring that that rigging is, executed properly, but then also verified and checked, as you mentioned, part of the procedures prior to performing the hoist operation to get Dragon into its comfortable nest. And at that point, we have additional crew members, like you said, that we're going to be very excited to get this Dragon on board. But it takes time, and we've got to go a little slow, because slow is smooth, and then smooth is fast, and that allows us to get crew on board.
Yeah, and once Dragon is in that nest, we saw that it was near the end of the ship. It will actually slide forward to position itself next to a platform, which will be level with the hatch. So when they open the hatch, the astronauts can egress comfortably out of the Dragon capsule there.
Excellent service. And that is a beautiful shot if you're just tuning in to see Shannon, the recovery vessel, SpaceX's recovery vessel in the Atlantic, ready to meet and greet and hoist the Ax-3 crew upon their splashdown today off the coast of Florida.
And for those wondering what this landing pad is for, again, once the crew egresses the vehicle, they will, do some safety and health checks to make sure that the crew is healthy. But then they'll board a helicopter that's going to land on that landing pad that will take them back to land pretty quickly. So they've got some great service, as you mentioned.
And what's excellent about this view, too, is you can really see a lot of aspects of these operations kind of play out.
Dragon SpaceX, comm check.
Loud and clear, SpaceX. Copy.
Copy. We have you the same. We are transmitting through Shannon recovery vessel now, and with this, I'm going to try and set up the quick PMC with flight surgeon.
Okay, standing by.
Hearing a little bit of calm there between Core and Commander Lopes-Allegria on Dragon Freedom, waiting to establish some communication so that they can talk with SpaceX medical surgeon. But during that time, crews on ground, or in the water actually, are continuing to make operations or proceed through operations to prepare Dragon for hoist into the recovery vessel Shannon. So you can see on your left there the initial fast boat that made initial covery and proceeded through rigging operations for the Dragon spacecraft, and the recovery vessel Shannon nearing or making closer approach to Dragon to begin the hoisting operations.
There you can see, as John mentioned, the recovery vessel is now beginning to pull the Dragon capsule towards it.
Dragon SpaceX, we are back on Dragon to Ground Public.
Loud and clear.
I think what's amazing about this shot, Jesse, is it looks like it's all so simple. And the care and precision that has to go into this operation from all of the teams that you see, that you can't even see in this shot, that are supporting this type of operation, is amazing. To allow for that hydraulic lift now to come down and begin this hoisting operation. All of this was a very tightly choreographed dance to get us to this point, and it's really exciting to see us getting here to where we're about to hoist Dragon into the nest.
Yeah, exactly. It may look easy, but it is, you know, a lot of training, a lot of effort, a lot of planning goes into these operations. And as you said, very exciting. The hydraulic lift is now down, and they will begin to start to lift the Dragon capsule here shortly. We'll lift the capsule onto the deck of the recovery vessel, into the nest that you see there. That's that circular ring there on the deck. And again, once the Dragon capsule is seated.
Dragon SpaceX, approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift.
We copy, SpaceX.
Good update there, just about 5 minutes away from lift. Again, once the capsule is in that nest on the deck, that nest will actually slide forward to put Dragon next to a platform that will make it much easier for the crew to egress the Dragon capsule.
Right, and once they egress, they'll be greeted by SpaceX and Axiom medical professionals to just ensure that, you know, hey, we just want to make sure you're doing okay, everything's going all right, do those first initial checks, and then at that point, crew is able to step out and take their first steps too, for the first steps in a number of weeks.
Yeah, very, very exciting. Again, very cool that the crew on board this recovery vessel gets to be the first to greet the crew after they've been in space for a few weeks.
Dragon SpaceX, brace for capsule lift.
Bracing.
And a nice big jump into the ocean for the recovery crew, completing their rigging operations. And Dragon Freedom being lifted onto recovery vessel Shannon. I love that they mentioned to brace for the lift.
Yeah.
You could see that the vehicle is moving and swaying a little bit, but I'm sure it was nothing compared to reentry.
Oh yeah, yeah. Crew's had a lot of dynamic operations associated with today, and this is one of the final ones. There's a few more that have to go into play before they're back on land. But this moment of getting them finally back out of the water and into this nest situated while they're comfortable is a wonderful moment for the Ax-3 crew.
And a great choreographed lift there. Gently setting down the Dragon capsule onto the nest.
It's important for this point too, right after that lift, to kind of orient it just right so that it's ready for that translation maneuver you talked about, while also ensuring that crew is staying in a comfortable, well-oriented position so that egress operations are as smooth as they can be.
Yeah, this gives you a good view of that hatch that the crew is going to egress from. You can see that it's pretty much in the middle of the capsule, so moving it towards the platform, that platform will be just at the bottom of that hatch. And that hatch has been closed since they left Earth.
Dragon SpaceX, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks. Stand by for translation to the egress platform.
SpaceX Dragon, we copy.
Good calls there between Core and Commander Lopes-Allegria to confirm that crew is that we are preparing to press into the egress phase of today's operations. But yeah, Jesse, you mentioned that that side hatch that they'll be coming out of hasn't been opened in a number of weeks, and that's because when they're on orbit, right, they're using the hatch that's under that nose cone, the docking hatch, to translate between their vehicle and ISS. So once they close that door on launch day, it doesn't open until today.
And I'm sure the crew is very excited for that side hatch to open.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We did hear some comms talking about this, but the crew, the recovery crew there, is doing some last safety checks now that the vehicle is on the deck of the recovery vessel prior to the translation motion of moving the capsule towards the egress platform. Live view inside of the capsule that is on the recovery vessel, with the crew still inside, patiently waiting.
That's right. If you're just joining us, we're in the final phases of the recovery of the splashdown of the Ax-3 crew, which splashed down back to Earth earlier today at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time, or 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. We're in those final phases of recovery efforts, which is the next step up being hatch open. So this will be the first time that crew has exited that side hatch in over 3 weeks, or about 3 weeks, or 23 flight days and 21 days in space. Crew is currently in the Dragon vehicle, but on board the recovery vessel Shannon, as ground crews are still preparing some final tweaks and preparations to translate the vehicle into a position that crew can egress.
If you're just now joining us, you are watching live coverage of the Ax-3 splashdown and recovery, currently in progress. On your left-hand screen, you can see that the Dragon capsule, Dragon Freedom, is on board our recovery vessel, Shannon. The recovery crew is doing their final checks prior to the translation of the capsule towards the egress platform. The next event coming up will be side hatch opening up, and that will be the first time that the hatch will be opened since launch day, and the Axiom-3 crew will take their first breath of fresh air since boarding Falcon 9 at the start of their mission on January 18th. You can see the crew live on your right-hand screen inside of the Dragon capsule, again patiently waiting.
Right, ground crews are still walking through their procedural checks and verifications to ensure that Dragon is in a safe position to translate, and it looks like they have made that call. So you can see Dragon there translating now.
Very exciting. I'm sure the crew can feel that movement, and they're getting really excited for that hatch to open. There's that egress platform that we've been mentioning. You can see the recovery crew there just preparing the vehicle in preparation for that side hatch opening. And a good view inside of Dragon. We have the commander on the left-hand side, pilot on the right-hand side. You can see the displays there.
Dragon SpaceX, ground team is making final preps for hatch open. Stand by for side hatch opening.
Standing by.
And you could see those displays. Right behind that display is the hatch, and that is what the crew is looking at. So as soon as that side hatch opens, the crew will be able to see the recovery crew and the medical crew. They're waiting there for them.
Right, and these are those initial checks that we talked about. The first people that the crew is greeted by is by the medical teams to just ensure that they're doing well after their flight and after their return home, and they'll make some medical assessments and make sure they're okay. And at that point, crew is egressing the vehicle and onto that helicopter ride back home. And there is the hatch opening. Welcome home, crew of Ax-3.
Now that that side hatch is open, they are going to put a protective tool there to ensure that the crew is safe when they egress the vehicle. And their first human interaction with someone from Earth in the last 3 weeks.
It's a great example of even in this moment, right? The hatch is opened, crew is ready to get out. We're still taking our time to make sure that they're okay, that everything on board is as it should be. And at that point, we'll begin crew one by one, leaving their Dragon Freedom vehicle.
And this again is a standard procedure. Even when they're getting up out of their seats, it's very important that they are very careful. They've been in space for quite a while. And so the crew there will also, help them if the crew needs help, make sure that they're healthy and safe as they're egressing through that side hatch.
Exactly. It can be, a little bit different when you've been in space for a few days.
Yeah,
experiencing microgravity. So exactly right. That type of assistance, if needed, is there and able to be provided as support. That is an amazing view of the Ax-3 crew, waving, smiling, of course, as they have been since launch day on January 18th.
Some great waves. You can see their very excited faces there. That was awesome.
That was a wonderful shot. That was a wonderful shot. Getting thumbs up there between ground crews and commander. Now, as you mentioned earlier, this is MLA's second trip on the AX on Crew Dragon for an Axiom mission. So he's aware of this process and this procedure. I'm sure he's telling his crew, "Hey guys, we're going to take our time." And it looks like they are ready to proceed with egress.
Yes, you could see MLA removing his harness. Again, frequent flyer, as you've mentioned, our first frequent flyer on Dragon. Super exciting.
Maybe he'll get to put a sticker on the on the inside of the capsule.
And you can see there that they've installed basically a protective tool around the hatch, the side hatch, as well as a little bit of a ramp there so that the crew can safely egress. They are still in their suits and also need to protect the suits themselves. So we will make sure that the suits do not get damaged as they're egressing. You'll see that the crew, the recovery crew there, will help them exit, may put their hand over their helmet just to make sure that they don't bump their head. And there's a few people there to help them, which is great.
Right, and like we mentioned, this is their first moment back on Earth, and over in 23 days, gravity is going to be a familiar but reminder of an experience. And so, coming out of this hatch, you know, it's it may seem and look simple, but there are some nuances associated with it, with wearing that suit that you want to protect for, with also protecting for just your mobility coming back from this mission with its mission duration. You certainly want to be aware of their first time back in gravity in a while. So all of those translation aids really help ensure that when they're getting out of the vehicle, they're doing it as safely as possible, but also as comfortably as we can let them.
Yeah, exactly. And as we mentioned, you know, the side hatch is open, but they're not running out of their seats, right? They're taking, it is step by step, removing the harnesses. They did remove some of the feet rests at the bottom of their seats. All of these things to make it easier for them to exit the vehicle.
Right, because at the end of the day with all of this, you want to make sure that you're comfortably getting out of the vehicle. And we saw there ground crews reminding crew, hey, just might want to close that visor just to be safe.
And to watch their, watch their head as they're getting out of their seat.
Exactly. Yeah. And we see the pilot making his way out of his seat and about to egress the vehicle. So Wальтер Вилладей will be taking his first steps in 23 days on Earth. We can see Wальтер coming out of Dragon, having some assistance from ground crews. Visor up.
Awesome.
And I do think I see a smile on that face. And a wave. A wave and a thumbs up. Wальтер is feeling good.
Welcome home, Wальтер Вилладей. If you're just now joining us, we are watching the live egress of the Axiom-3 crew. And you can see that Markus Wandt, our mission specialist coming out of seat 4, is getting ready to egress the Dragon Freedom capsule.
This will be Marcus's first steps in gravity in 23 flight days, 21 days in space, and 18 days aboard the International Space Station. So we're taking our time and making sure that he is comfortable and making sure that he's going to be safely egressing the vehicle. Welcome home, Marcus. And again, visor up, and I think, of course, we're going to see Marcus smiling. Yeah, we are. Okay.
There we go. Some waves.
He's giving his wave. Marcus is feeling good. This is excellent to see. Crew's going to assist as we take those first steps back in gravity. And our third egress of the day, we have Альпер Гезеравчи, the first Turkish astronaut to fly to space. Альпер is looking good. He's excited. He's excited. He's ecstatic. He's happy to be home. He's giving excellent smiles and a great fist bump there. I love to see that.
And last but definitely not least, our frequent flyer, Commander Michael Lopes-Allegria.
And even with that frequent flyer card, MLA is no stranger to this maneuver, but he is also taking his time, and he is looking good. And welcome back, MLA. Excellent. It is wonderful to see all 4 crew members of Ax-3 egress comfortably and safely out of the Dragon Freedom that they've spent their time in for the last 2 days, certainly, but also just a number of days on this mission. But they're looking good, they're looking healthy, and it was wonderful to see. So.
Well, now that our crew are safely back home on Earth and getting the first checks by SpaceX and Axiom Space medical teams, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their historic return. Ax-3 lifted off from launch pad 39A on Thursday, January 18th, and arrived at station 36 hours later. They spent over 21 days in space, 18 of those days on the International Space Station before undocking just over 2 days ago. And this morning at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time, they splashed down off the coast of Daytona, Florida.
And it has been an amazing journey. So once their first medical checks are complete, they'll catch a helicopter flight back to shore, where they will transfer to a waiting aircraft ready to take them to Houston. While this concludes the flight portion of the Ax-3 mission, much of the research portfolios that were performed on station will continue to be reviewed and analyzed over the coming weeks. So some of their studies will even continue over the coming days and months. So Jesse, it's been an amazing time spending this desk with you from undock all the way through splashdown. It's been an absolute honor, so thank you very much. And to SpaceX, thank you for an incredible flight and taking such great care of our crew as we saw today and throughout the entire mission. To NASA and all the International Space Station partners who have enabled access to the orbiting laboratory and made the efforts of Axiom Space, Italy, Turkey, and ESA possible, thank you. We look forward to collaborating with you again soon with AX4. And all of you watching, it's been an honor and a privilege to share the journey of MLA, Walter, Альпер, and Marcus to space and back again. So as we bring this mission to a close, we celebrate how the Ax-3 mission continues to demonstrate that the opportunities presented in microgravity have grown to include more countries, more institutions, industries, and individuals than ever before. So through missions like this, we are redefining the pathway to low Earth orbit and building for beyond. So be sure to check out axiomspace.com to learn more about flight opportunities available along our journey to the world's first International Space Station. I'm John Rackham, and we're signing off now with a welcome home to the crew of Ax-3.
And I'm Jesse Anderson. Thanks to everyone for joining us on another successful mission to the International Space Station. Be sure to tune in for our next human spaceflight mission, NASA's Crew 8, which is just a few weeks away. Check out spacex.com/launches for updates and for the schedule of upcoming missions. We'll see you again soon.